gonna show you a founder's pose here, founder's exercise. You can do this from different feet widths. I like to start out a little bit wider than hips, but do what feels best for you, and feel free to modify anywhere from about hip width to even getting pretty wide. From our starting position though, we're gonna grab ground with your feet. Best to do this barefoot or stocking feet. As we grab ground with your feet, you might notice the arches pull away from the ground, or if you already have an arch built there, maybe it's just active. We're gonna act like we're trying to grab ground, but also pull your feet towards each other, which is gonna hit the insides of the leg muscles. Hopefully you feel these muscles active. Gonna try to keep that throughout. Another thing that we add to this exercise is the decompression breath. They're really thinking about staying long through the spine throughout versus kind of collapsing as we start to move. I have a whole video on decompression breathing. If that's a new idea to you, definitely recommend finding that before we go on here. So again, gonna grab ground with our feet, breathe in, stay nice and tall, active through these adductors here, the insides of your legs. And now being long through the spine and not arching or changing the posture of your spine, we're gonna hinge at our hips. So notice the knees now stay back, hips stay back. The knees should be almost behind the ankles as we work this hinge. So my spine hasn't shifted posture at all, and I'm still grabbing ground with my feet nice and active here. Your hands can be maybe here, opening your chest, kind of keep those shoulder blades back, or this is another thing we can come to check where your low back's at. From here, just working a couple hinges. So this is a little bit different than the traditional founder's pose from foundation training, but I like to train a hip hinge here first and feel a couple of those reps. Once we feel okay with that, we're gonna add the extension that makes us the founder. So we come into our hinge, finding a little bit of tension here in the hamstrings perhaps, still grabbing ground with the feet though, active through the arches and adductors. Hips stay back. We're slowly gonna drive those hands forward. Hips might come back even a little bit more. So notice now chin stays tucked, eyes are looking a couple feet in front of you, hands reaching out, hips staying back. So now we create a lot of space between your hips and your fingertips, nice and long through the spine. You can really use your breath now here. Nice and long there. If there's any pain in the neck, we relax the arms a little bit. But otherwise, trying to keep the hands long, thumbs lifted up towards the ceiling, starting to feel activity through your whole posterior chain. From your hamstrings, up into your low back, and even maybe in the mid back and upper back. Just gonna be here for a couple breaths, maybe 30 seconds or so. We'll bring the hands down, keep active with the feet, control the hinge out of it. If you struggle with the spinal part to this, I recommend finding a dowel, maybe a broom handle, and working this into our posture. So one hand will be at the top and one hand will be at your low back here. Gonna work on keeping the dowel in contact with your head, your mid back here, and then also your tailbone. So if we start to round your back, you notice, the dowel comes up off of my tailbone. That's something we're trying to avoid. Want to keep a pretty neutral spine through the whole exercise. So that looks like with the dowel here, same thing, just working on hinging forward. As we get better at this, then we can add the reach, kind of taking the dowel away, making this a little bit more challenging. Really important that as we do this, we know how to program it. You can work on just the hinges, you can work on the hinge and reach and kind of hold through your breath. What's cool with the founder is that we get to load the posterior chain, which is all the way from the bottoms of your feet, kind of up the backs of your legs and into your spine. We're working all of that tissue and we're intentionally loading your back. So as you reach the arms forward, that creates leverage to a point that adds tension to your low back and forces your low back to do more. Really awesome to work your low back through that decompressed posture, but also without a whole lot of compressive force, like squatting or deadlifting, how sometimes that can compress our spine. This is gonna add load to the muscle tissue and the ligamentous and fascial tissues without a whole lot of that compressive load or external like weight-bearing force.